When did you get the role that everybody talks about, even today?
Well, I think the producers of Forrest Gump saw Of Mice and Men, and they invited me to come in and audition for Lieutenant Dan. I did, and got lucky to get the part. We started shooting in 1993, and the movie came out in 1994, 30 years ago. 30 years ago this month, actually.
And it's still one of the favorites of all times. I've watched Apollo 13. That was a great movie, too.
Thank you.
And, of course, Ransom. That was a great one. I read that you weren't too sure about Ransom because you were the villain, but you said you had fun with it?
Yeah. Our kids were young when I read that, and, my career was changing. Of Mice and Men, Forrest Gump, those things, a lot of things happened right around in there. And so the career was kind of it was ascending at that point. So I started to get offered some good things. I got offered, Ron Howard did Apollo 13. It was great to work with Tom again, Tom Hanks. And then Ron's next movie after Apollo 13 was going to be Ransom. My kids were little, and I don't know if you've seen Ransom. He's a pretty bad guy in it, and I didn't like him when I read it. I didn't really want to play the part of a guy who kidnaps somebody's kids, because my kids were little.
Lieutenant Dan has touched the lives of millions of veterans. And did you have any idea that would just touch them?
Well, when we were shooting, we were having a great time making the movie, for sure. So we knew it felt good, but you never quite know how it's all going to end up. And in fact, it was very difficult for some of us to actually know what was going on in the film, because it's all these separate little stories, right? Like, I never really worked with Sally Field. One scene, one little scene with Sally and Robin Wright, but the rest of the time they were off doing their shooting all their scenes. We didn't really know what they were doing, so I had no clue until I saw the movie. It was very hard to kind of picture how the movie was going to end up, because I really didn't know what everybody was doing in the film. But when we saw it the first time, everybody, I've told a story about the image that I remember sitting there in the theater, just a small little theater. They wanted to show the cast and some of the people that worked on it before it premiered. And the lights came up, and everybody, and Robin Wright was with Sean Penn at the time, and so they were sitting down here, and they stood up and turned around, and I was sitting back there, and they both looked at me. I remember locking eyes with them, and they both had big smiles on their faces, because we all knew it was really good, and it was a really good movie. And then, of course, it opened about a week later, and it was off to the races at that point. The movie did so well, and 30 years later, it's still kind of very present in people's minds.